talking to me.
All right. Well, thank you for speaking with me. So yeah, let's just get right into it.
Okay?
So we know you have deep roots in Alabama. You were born in Fairfield, I believe, and one significant part of your career was prosecuting members of the the Ku Klux Klan for the 1963 bombing of the Baptist Church in Birmingham. How do you plan to continue that legacy of fighting for Alabamians?
Well, I appreciate you asking that because that was such a horrific act. I mean, it destroyed families, really the community, and it was at a time when a full measure of justice was just not available for certain people in Alabama, the black community. I mean, this was not the only act of violence committed against the black community in Alabama. There were a ton of bombings. But there was never a full measure of justice. The interesting piece of that is that that bomb really woke up the conscience of America. It woke the conscience of a president and a Congress who became on the Civil Rights Act and then the Voting Rights Act. It woke up the conscience of Birmingham and Alabama to the atrocities of Jim Crow. And so, I have, for all of my career, including my time in the U.S. Senate, been that voice for the minority community, for all Alabamians, and I'm going to continue to do that. I think as governor, you have that same principle where you have to hold powerful people accountable, and that we have and that everyone has a seat at the table. We want to build a house with a crowded table where there's a place by the fire for everybody, not just the rich, not just the powerful, not just a certain zip code in this community, but for everybody. And everybody has equal access to justice and equal access to opportunities, both educational and economic and in healthcare. So that's what we're going to do. And I think the main thing right now is that we're going to have to continue the fight for voting rights because that is being rolled back even as we speak, and getting fair maps so that the state legislature, as well as the members of Congress, reflect Alabama and not just the power brokers that want to stay in power.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up because one of my major questions is anyone who has been paying attention to the ongoing redistricting battle in Alabama, the Supreme Court just gave the green light for Alabama to use the 2023 legislature drawn map that was found to violate the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It was found to violate that by a federal court. Two of those judges were appointed by President Trump. And then also the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed that in 2023, but then they reversed their decision.
Right.
And so, as a candidate for governor, how would you respond to concerns from Alabamians who believe the Supreme Court's decision weakens protections for minority voters and reduces confidence in the
I,
electoral process?
100% agree with them. There is no question about it. I mean, we are rolling back and going back to an era back that really was the reason why the Voting Rights Act was enacted in the first place. It is the reason why it got um, reauthorized twice, almost unanimously, including with Alabama's two United States senators. What's happened with this Supreme Court is the court has lost all credibility when it comes to partisan issues. They are a partisan court. They vote that way. They ignore their own rules and their own principles in order to have an outcome. This is an outcome driven court as opposed to a rule of law driven court. And it destroys the confidence in an institution that should be really revered. And I have revered this court for so long. But heck, we may as well just elect them as partisan judges if they're going to continue to do what they're doing. Because so it's a real outrage. But I will say this: first of all, as governor, I would have never called that special session.
Right.
We would not be here in this position because I would have never called that special session. I want people to remember that the states that have rushed to try to change their congressional maps after the decision out of Louisiana are the states of the old Confederacy.
Mm.
The very states that prompted Congress to act in the first place. Now, we're not going to go back to the days of poll taxes and literacy tests, but we don't have to with these decisions. We can marginalize minority communities in this state under the guise of political gerrymandering. And that's exactly what's happening. So what I'm going to do as governor is do a couple of things. Well, first of all, as a candidate, we're going to mobilize voters. Because remember, Jeff, that these lines are drawn based on historical data. And it's not just census data, it's historical voting data, including the people that actually voted, but not the people that didn't vote. So we're going to flip the script. We're going to get an increased turnout like we saw in this primary, and we're going to challenge these maps at the voting booth, not just in the courts anymore. That, I think, appears to be pretty much completed, at least for this election. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and we're working on this now, I'm going to call to Alabama establish a commission that will draw congressional maps and state House and state Senate maps using a nonpartisan commission in a way that can reflect the people of Alabama, not just their political preferences and how they may have voted the last time, but reflect their racial preferences, get their communities kept together. Those are the kind of things that we're going to be doing going forward as governor.
Right, so that instead of the politicians selecting their voters, the voters will select their leaders.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Great way to put it.
Yeah. Okay.
And and I will say this: what's really frustrating about this is that clearly, this Alabama government, from the governor on down to the legislature, clearly are trying to marginalize the minority community's votes in this state. There is no question about that. But they're also sending another message too, and that is that they are taking voters' votes for granted. They assume because you voted a certain way in the past, you're going to vote that way every time. And we're not going to take those votes for granted. We're not going to take Democratic votes for granted. We're not going to take independent votes for granted. We're going to be out there talking to people about what matters to them. And I don't want anybody in this state, I don't want anyone's votes taken for granted. We're going to go out there and try to earn every vote, no matter who they have voted for in the past.
Right. Right. And since you brought that up, what's, for some people who want to support your campaign and help get you elected, what are some of the best ways they can assist you?
Well, I think, number one, I want folks to pay attention to this campaign. I want folks to pay attention and do the homework. Really look, because votes count. Votes matter. And voting has consequences. Staying home has consequences. Voting straight ticket can have consequences. And I want people to look at every candidate on the ballot and do their homework. I want folks to compare the record. Right now, that record, it looks like it's going to be me and Tommy Tuberville. I want people to compare our records in the United States Senate. That's the best way to do it. I was not a football coach, so you can't compare me to that. But it's totally irrelevant to this, to who can govern best anyway. Compare our votes, and if you do that, and compare what we say and what we're wanting to do, we're trying to build that house for the crowded table. He is trying to divide us further by race, by religion, by zip code. Whether he is a resident of Alabama for purposes of qualifying doesn't really matter. Everybody knows he lives in Florida. And so that's really all he pretty much cares about. And I want folks to look at that. And people can get involved with our race by going to the website, DougJones.com, by making sure that people know our positions. And I want people to engage with us. I want folks, we're going to be moving around the state a lot. We're going to be talking to people. We're going to be doing town halls, community dialogues. I'm hoping that whenever I go into a community, people that have a question, people that don't maybe never have voted for me before, but might be considering it, maybe even people that think that are a surefire vote for the other side. Come to these town halls and let's engage in a dialogue. I think politicians, particularly Tommy Tuberville, has more monologues than dialogues. He doesn't have community conversations. We're going to have those kind of conversations, and I'm inviting all Alabamians to participate in those whenever we come to your area.
Okay, and will you have the stops that you'll be making all over Alabama published on your website?
Yeah, we're going to start doing that. We just revamped the website. It's not out there right now, but it will be. We're going to start doing that because we've not been out and about. I'm headed to Phoenix City tomorrow. I think to Roanoke on Tuesday, and so the travel schedule will pick back up, and we're going to have folks. There'll be obviously fundraising events, but the ones that we want to try to do, and wherever we go, we want to have some kind of community event that we broadcast it on our social media channels, and that we get folks there. I don't want to just speak to the choir. I don't want to just go talk to Democrats. There'll be a lot of those that will show up at our events, but I truly want to see public officials, and I want to see folks from all walks of life coming in, asking questions. That's the way democracy is supposed to be working. It's the way our electoral process is supposed to be working. Come check us out, and if you like what you hear, I want your vote. If you walk away thinking I just can't do that, that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Right, how democracy works.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
and okay, then, and then, so as Alabama continues to grow with people moving here for jobs, and the relative lower cost of living compared to other states, what are your long term plans to support Alabama's growing population and economy?
Well, let's be clear about a couple of things before we talk about that. First of all, our population is growing, but it's not growing at the same clip as we see our other southern states. Not growing like they're growing in South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and I'd like to see more of that. But I'd also like to keep people home. I want to do things in this state to try to help prop up small businesses and create some incentives for folks to start small businesses in these rural communities. Let's keep our kids on the family farm. Let's keep them in the communities they grew up in. And we can do that, I think, with some incentives for small businesses. The other piece of this that prefaced your question is that our cost of living is low compared to other states. Yes, in some areas, but not so much anymore. It used to be considerably lower, but now our healthcare costs are 116, 117% of the national average. Our housing costs are above the national average. We've got a number of things. Our wages are still, I think, 20% or more, 25% below the national average. So we've got to do things to narrow that gap. We've got to keep things going where wages go up, and we can try to do things to keep the cost of living from going up even further. We got to have some housing programs to get the housing costs stabilized. We've got to have health care. That is a huge thing that will help the economy of the entire state. So
And,
those are the kind of things that we're going to be doing, not just to attract folks to come to this state, but I just want people to stay in the state. I want our kids to go wherever they want to for their education. If they want to leave the state, great, but come back to us. If they can stay in the state, whether it is through college, junior college, or apprenticeships with some of our businesses or unions, I want to do those things where people are proud to stay here, they want to stay here, and we offer the kind of life that people can build community and family.
okay, great. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Alabama has the highest costs, even though relatively there's a lower cost of living, but with inflation and everything going on right now, it doesn't seem like it. But I believe Alabama has the highest health care costs of any southern state.
Correct.
Yes, and so yeah, we've got to do something about that.
Yeah,
Um,
and Medicaid expansion would be a way to do that. I mean, it is just it is unconscionable that this government, Alabama's Republican-led government, has refused to expand Medicaid when they had the opportunities
and
to do so.
and so I will
It's
assume that as if you are elected governor, you would expand Medicaid.
we are going to do that. It's the governor can expand the eligibility for Medicaid, but the
Right.
legislature's got to fund it. But we've not had a champion for Medicaid expansion by any statewide office holder. We've had legislators who've been a champion. We've had the Alabama Hospital Association and doctors who have been champions for it. We have had folks like Alabama Rise and others who have been champions, but you haven't had a statewide office holder that's been a champion, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to expand the eligibility for Medicaid, and we're going to start working with the legislature to try to find the money, to make sure we find the money to do that. Our rural hospitals are going to depend on it. We cannot depend on the big hospitals like UAB, UAH, South Alabama. We can't depend on them to bail out these rural hospitals and keep health care in every part of the state. We've got to have rural hospitals, and they will not survive without the Medicaid dollars.
Right.
There's a second piece of this that I'm really proud that we were able to do some work on when I was in the Senate for the first time. And that is to try to work with the federal government to try to get the reimbursement levels for Alabama on par with other southern states. We have some of the lowest reimbursements of any state in the country, and we've got to get that up so that our doctors, our hospitals are getting a fair reimbursement. Jeff, we are a poor state, okay? We are an unhealthy state. We need the federal government's help in trying to make sure that we keep our people healthy. And when we do that, we keep our economy healthy because we keep hospitals open, we keep doctors coming in, and all of those things that support hospitals, whether it's cafes and gas stations and grocery stores, all of those things that support the people that work at these hospitals depend on Medicaid dollars, and we've got to do that.
Okay. All right. And another my next question. Our news platform is based in Ozark and covers Dale County and the Wiregrass region, and Fort Rucker, formerly Fort Novosel before the current administration changed it back to Fort Rucker, is an important part of our local infrastructure and economy. And with ongoing federal government and Department of Defense realignments, do you plan to incentivize defense and military contractor companies to continue locating and operating in Alabama for to provide jobs for our residents?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did that in the Senate. I'm going to do that as governor. Look, our defense industry, our military, our research and development that we've done that is around the defense industry and space up in Huntsville is an incredibly important part of this. Fortunately, we've got a lot of dollars that come in that's kind of what I call baked into the federal dollars that are going to come into Alabama to help insulate economic downturns as long as Congress can get their act together and keep the government open, which they're not always prone to do.
Right.
But yes, I think look, you've got both the Wiregrass area, you've got the Air Force Base in Montgomery, you've got Anniston Army Depot, you've got all of the things going on in Huntsville. All of that is critical, not just to Alabama's economy, it's critical to our nation's security. And I saw that, I recognize that, and I believe that we can continue to work with whatever administration is in office, because every administration across the board has recognized the importance of Alabama to national security. And we can do the things to continue to give people opportunities. The only thing that I ask, and I'm going to demand, is that they don't just come in and make a whole bunch of money for their corporate boards. That this comes down to working folks in Alabama. I want to make sure that whatever we get, whatever federal contracts we get, these companies are going to come in, and Alabama workforce is going to be the backbone of their success, and we want to make sure that they're compensated accordingly, and their wages are such that they are can have that living wage, and not just make this for their corporate officers and their shareholders.
Okay. All right. And moving on to another topic. So I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're really busy. You previously have supported prison reform in Alabama, and you know we have Alabama has come under fire by many groups for uh, prison conditions, and if elected governor, what are some steps that you would take to address the state's prison system?
Yeah, and make sure folks understand that they've come under fire not just by a bunch of interest groups. They've come under fire by the Trump Department of Justice before. They've come under fire by other departments of justice and the courts.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of things that need to happen. First of all, I think there needs to be a little more transparency in how our prisons are operated, where the money's going, how the money's being spent, what training is available out there. And part of that transparency is how much money is being spent on lawyer fees to defend what appears to be the indefensible. We're going to put a stop to that process, okay? We're going to want to make our prison system run where we don't need private lawyers to come in and defend the indefensible. We want to make sure that our health care and the prison system, our food services, and every other service that has to be contracted out is done fairly in an open bid process with reputable companies. Right now, we had to cancel $1 billion contract with a company that's been in bankruptcy a couple of times, and everybody is shocked that they're having to do it again. So
Wow.
I think transparency is incredibly important, and we haven't seen that with our prison system. And look, I've been in the criminal justice system for a long time. I was a prosecutor. I was U.S. attorney. I've defended folks. I've been in those prisons. Um, you do not have to sacrifice security to have more transparency. You need some independent reviews, and we're going to do those kind of things to make sure dollars are being spent wisely, and we have a prison system that not only treats people humanely, but punishes people, and then works with folks to get when they get out of prison to make sure that they have a reentry program that can make them productive members of society. Now,
Yeah. So,
there's almost everybody that goes into prison is going to come out at some point, and we need to make sure that that is a fair system. The parole system needs to be revamped. Fortunately, I think it's gotten better the last couple of years. But and finally, I want to see where all this money is being spent on these new prisons.
right.
A prison that was supposed to cost 500 million dollars is now costing 1.2 or 3 billion. I know we've
Wow.
had inflation, okay, but we need a full blown accounting of where that money's gone and who's getting that money. And I want to make sure we do things to, look, Jeff, you haven't asked this, but I'm going to tell you, I really want to do some things to strengthen Alabama's corruption laws. I want more disclosure by members of the legislature and the executive branch of government. I want to prohibit stock trading and future trading by members of the government, at least the executive branch of government. And I want more transparency because I think that is a real problem right now. We just don't know. And I think we need to strengthen those laws considerably to make sure that taxpayers' money is not being either wasted or stolen.
Right. Right. That's a good point. And my final question, and then after that, I'll give you a moment to give like a closing remarks. And you kind of touched on this a little earlier. But what are your plans to earn support from voters outside of the Democratic Party, including independents and um, undecided voters, and even those within the Republican Party who feel that the current state of affairs have just disappointed them and left them disillusioned with the process. So finally, what you touched on this before, but what are your plans to earn support from voters outside of the Democratic Party, including independents and undecided voters, and even Republicans who feel, let down and disillusioned with the state of affairs in Alabama and in America right now?
Yeah, it's kind of what we were talking about a minute ago. We're going to try to get to every community, and we've also got others that are running. Phil Linsler is Lieutenant Governor, Jeff McLaughlin, Attorney General. Ron Sparks will be an important piece down there in the Wiregrass area. Ross Houston, Violet Edwards, Wayne Rogers. We're, we're going to run a campaign that is going to be all over the state. And that means going into places where I don't think you've seen Democrats go before, to listen to people. It's not just to talk to people. We want to listen. We've already done sessions where folks talk to me about what's going on in those communities. I want to be a governor for all people. That means getting out there and staying out there and working with folks and understanding their cares and concerns. Jeff, a famous Democratic politician, Tip O'Neill, used to say, all politics is local. Well, I agree with that, and it's still the case, but I know also that all politics is personal, and not in a selfish way. People need to know and want to know what you're going to do for their family, what you're going to do for their communities. How is it going to benefit if they vote for you? What can you offer to that candidate by way of advice and programs? That's what we're going to do. And when we do that, we're going to also be highlighting the contrast between us and particularly